Hey, this is Passy from Passy's World of ICT, the guy with the white hat. And today we've got a Visual Basic calculator application, an assignment, so you can build a project. So it's a real world calculator, and we've done one for you. We've done the blood alcohol content calculation, which police use to find out whether you're drunk driving or not. But anyway, let's just get into it and get started. Okay, so real world calculators. Now with this assignment, you don't need to do all of these. You just need to choose one of these calculators to build, because we've given you a lot of lessons. You've learned how to do pseudocode to design things. You've learned how to do input on screen forms, how to get images displayed on screen forms, drop-down lists, text boxes, radio buttons, and a lot of coding, like to do validation to check out the user input, mathematics to do formulas and present answers on the screen, and round those answers off to the appropriate number of decimal places. So you have all of the skills now to build any of these real world calculators, and that should kind of be pretty exciting and pretty cool. So these are some of the ones you can do. So the blood alcohol content one, the ones that the police use, those machines use to work out whether you're too intoxicated to be driving a car, whether you've had too much drink and should not be driving. We've done that as an example project. The formulas in that look a bit scary, but look, it's not that bad. We're going to show you that one later. That's the example project, and you need to kind of do all the same sort of things we've done there when you do your assignment. So for your assignment, you pick one of these other ones. The body mass index to see if your body weight is in a healthy range. Okay, electrical power consumption to work out how much it costs to put your air conditioning on for 3 hours or so when it's a really hot day. Fuel cost calculator to compare the cost maybe of a small car versus a medium versus those giant SUVs that everyone seems to like driving around these days. A loan repayment calculator, how many calories should you be taking in and eating a day? Or go to www.calculator.net. They have so many calculators there for different things, and you might like the look of one of those online calculators and decide that you're going to build something like that for your assignment. But look, you don't have to do all of these, just do one. And this is a great thing to take all the skills you've learned so far in the course and apply them and make something. And this could be a prototype which later on could be made into a some sort of website application or something like that, okay? So body mass index, this is used, as we can see here, that some people don't eat enough or they've got eating disorders and they weigh way too less, they're too light. And some people just eat and eat and eat, and yeah, corn chips and chocolate biscuits and ice cream and everything tastes so good because food scientists have made it that way on purpose, but that makes us get way too big into the obese area, okay? So there is a body mass index, how tall you are versus how much you weigh. There is a healthy range for that, and that's what this does. So here's an online version of the calculator. This is a fairly simple formula, so this has proved popular with our students in the past to do this particular exercise because it just involves your height, which needs to be measured in centimeters, and your weight in kilograms. Okay, now our American friends who are watching this, what you will have to do is just, you can look up online how to convert your height in inches, which you guys can measure, into centimeters. And I think from memory, it's just that you would take what your height is in inches and just multiply that by, I think, 2.54 maybe, or is it 2.51? I think it's 2.54. Anyway, look it up. So inside the program, what you'll do is on your screen form, you'll have them put it in inches, but part of the calculation will be you'll take those inches, multiply them by 2.54 or whatever the conversion factor is, and get centimeters. Then you'll be good to go doing the weight, the body height in meters. Okay, so it doesn't even need to be in centimeters. So then you'll have to put the centimeters into meters and divide by 100, but you guys will figure it out. You're smart. You've done our programming course. Now with your weight in the US too, you'll be in pounds. So you just need to find out what the conversion rate is to put pounds into kilograms and just have that multiplying factor or dividing factor, whichever way around it is, in your program, and you'll be okay. All right, then you click calculate and it gives the BMI answer. Now what would be nice is if underneath you can just snipping tool this off the internet. I think it's on that web link here, the BUPA calculator. If you go to that web link, you could just snipping tool this out as a JPEG and put that as a picture box underneath your results. It just looks nice. Like, this is efficient. People can put the values in and get their answer really quickly, but this is making the program effective, creating a better user experience where the program is more pleasant to use and offers more than just the basic functions, okay? It's got non-functionality where it's nice to use. So here we've got, yeah, you can look up 28.6. I think this was my actual value. And I can see, yeah, I'm getting towards this red obesity. I really need to get out doing more exercises and get back towards a healthy range, okay? So that's a very popular one, BMI. Now the power consumption calculator, this can be used for how much does it cost to have your fridge running for 7 days or for a 30-day month? How much does it cost to put the air conditioning on max on a hot day, to have it on all afternoon for 6 hours? And you can do that with the power consumption calculator. And there's a worked example there of how the formula works. And we even did this one back when we did prototyping in Python. The first part of that prototyping was to build a power consumption calculator for different appliances or household electrical items. So if you go back to that YouTube video, which was prototyping in Python on the Passie's World of ICT YouTube channel, you can look at that and it'll give you the formula, show you examples. So all you have to do is take what was done in Python and figure out how to do the same sort of thing in Visual Basic, all right? Now, personal loan repayments, these are just based on, I think, just simple interest formula, the I equals PRT over 100, I think it is. You can look that up for simple interest. And here's an example calculator from a banking site. So you could build something like that, but build it in Visual Basic, all right? So you just need to pick one of these to do. So the steps for doing this calculator assignment is we're pretty much following the standard problem-solving methodologies, it's called here in Australia. And if you're doing VC software development, that's what it's called. So the first thing is doing your research and your analysis. Then you design it, which we use pseudocode to do that. Prototyping it is just getting the rough version working first without validation. Then you kind of fix it up and make it all nice. Then you test it to make sure everything works properly. And in the end, you kind of evaluate it. You measure, well, how good is this program? Maybe you give a couple of your friends a go at using the program and say, hey, does the screen look good? Was it really simple to use? Did it all make sense? And then you can sort of evaluate it at the end, checking out, because you might look at it and think it's fantastic, but get a few other people to try it out and get their opinions, and that's called evaluation that we do at the end of the project. Right, so step one, select a calculator project to do. So the blood alcohol content, that's a demo one, so you can't do that. But there is a standard drinks calculator that kind of hooks into that. So maybe you could do that one because we haven't given you all the code for that. Or maybe one of the more challenging ones. There's body mass index, power consumption, and so on. So you'll need to research on Google, find out what the basic formula is and what units of measurement they're in. So for example, if you're doing BMI, you might have your height in centimeters typed in on the screen because that's what people will know, their height. But in the formula, remember to divide by 100 first because the formula actually wants it in meters inside the program. So work out the inputs, the outputs, what resources you're going to need, and sort of your design specs, okay? So how the screen form's going to look, things like that. Then we write the algorithm. So you do have to submit, if you're one of my students doing VC software development, you have, here in Victoria, Melbourne, you have to write out the algorithm, type that up in Word and hand that in as part of your assignment. You have to have full testing of it first, like do a trace table to desk check it, and we show you that in the blood alcohol calculator. And further on in our YouTube channel, we're going to do some stuff on trace tables and testing, go into that in a lot more detail. But the blood alcohol content example assignment shows you how to do that. Then you need to actually design the screen app and create and build it, which might take you a while. Create test data, do all your tests that you need to do, and then at the end you're going to write an evaluation, okay, just about what happened in that project and how things have turned out at the end. All right, so it's an 8-step process. So it's not just making the program quickly and getting it working, going, yeah, I made myself a calculator, that's cool. You got to do all those problem-solving methodology steps. Why do you do them? Because for bigger programs, and especially commercial programs like I did when I was working for banks and telcos here in Australia as a programmer, it's super important that all those steps are followed properly, or you can cost the company millions of dollars and of course lose your job, and word gets around quickly and you never get another programming job again, because he was the guy that lost $2 million by not testing it properly. Anyway, that's a story for another day. I know guys that happened to. Right, now this blood alcohol content one, the example one, let's just look at that. This here is the finished one. So this is when it's all finished and nice, and it's got validation. People can enter how many drinks they've consumed. Maybe that could be a drop-down list, because you'd hope they haven't consumed more than 20 drinks. After a certain amount, I think their blood alcohol level would cause alcoholic poisoning and they'd die anyway. But anyway, we've just left it so they can type it in, because the thing is they might just sort of have had 1.5 standard drinks. So they could put 1.5 in here. So we've left it open to put decimals in. Body weight in kilograms, they can enter that. The number of hours since their last drink, and notice we've got 1.5 there, because that might only be 1.5 hours since they had that last drink. So we don't want to confine it to 1s, 2s and 3s with a drop-down list. We just want to have a text box where they can type it in. So these are all things to think about in your design, to have decimals here, so they could do like 1.25 for 1 hour and 15 minutes if your maths is good. And then they have to select their gender, male or female. And there's a legal issue with that, because in Australia it's illegal to have this on a form. You have to have male, female or other. Maybe on the form we should have just even put other in, but we've got a disclaimer here to cover the legal problem that we weren't able to include other for I think the 33 different types of gender sort of things you can have, because in the actual science that was done for this, it depends on male and female biological makeup as to what your resistance to alcohol is, and women have a lower resistance and sort of get drunk quicker than guys do. And so we've put here, it's scientifically used in the human body, only caters for males and females. We apologize that if your gender is other, a back value cannot be determined for you. Okay, so we've legally covered ourselves there, because it is actually illegal now in Australia just to have male and female. You always have to have for gender, male, female, and another box called other. Anyway, so then you check the back. So you click that button, it goes off and does all the conversions and calculations. This guy here, this male guy, over the limit. He's past the 0.05, which is for Melbourne, Australia, and he's going to be in some trouble and lose his license for a period of time and get a fine. All right, now you might not have time to build and test all of this. It would be great if you could, just to get some more programming experience, but at least read through the step-by-step Word document, which you can download with this lesson, and the download will be in the YouTube description. All right, and this one's a free download too, so it doesn't cost you anything for the step-by-step Word document. Or check with your teacher. If you're a student doing this course, your teacher may already have the Passey's World of ICT course resources for you and be able to give them to you. So you need to at least read through that so you know all the sorts of things that was done in this one, so that you can do your one the same, okay? Now, for our American friends, again, apart from them measuring their height and their body weight, also their standard drinks are different. So a standard drink in the US, you get more alcohol than you do in Australia. So in Australia and New Zealand, it's only 10 grams of alcohol per standard drink. But in the US, where they use fluid ounces, so we've got a different formula here for you American guys to use, yours works out that it's 14 grams for your standard drinks in America, okay? So you have to use a different value there. So standard drinks is done by that formula. If you're in the US, you will have to modify it slightly to get your American answer, because you have fluid ounces for your alcohol volume, and you have 14 grams allowed. Stronger drinks in America, yeah. All right, standard alcoholic drinks calculator. So here's one from the internet, and it's basically just how many milliliters for Australia and New Zealand, how many milliliters size the drink is, the strength of the alcohol, whether it's like 2.5%, 3.5%, 4.9. And then click, this one actually has all the different countries too, which is pretty cool, but yours doesn't have to be that complicated. If it just does Australia, that's fine. If you're in Australia, just does the US, in America, that's fine. And then you click calculate and it tells you how many standard drinks you have. Because that standard drinks figure, that's needed for putting into the, I've just realized I left my headphones in while I was making the video, my goodness. So yeah, that standard drinks is used in the next step for where we're going to calculate the blood alcohol concentration. So the blood alcohol concentration, use this calculator to estimate the blood alcohol concentration. So here's one from the internet, and you just put in whether you're male or female and your weight, standard drinks, and how many hours it is since you had your last drink, and click evaluate, and then it will calculate it. So this has been done as an example project, and the full build instructions are in the step-by-step Word document. Now, don't be scared off by the formula. The formula looks really long and complicated here, but it's not that bad. It's kind of the blood alcohol content is how much alcohol you've consumed. Now you get that by doing how many standard drinks you've had, and because it's 10 grams of alcohol in Australia, you times that by 10. You do the same thing in the US, work out the number of their standard drinks, but you need to change that 10 to a 14 if you're in the US. All right, now body weight in grams, just take the kilogram weight and times by 1,000 is how you get it into grams. Then there's this thing called resistance. Now the resistance value is just if, and this is where you use radio buttons and an if else, if they're female, resistance is 0.55, they've got a lower resistance to alcohol, they get more alcohol intoxicated quicker, and on less alcohol than guys do. Males, the average one is 0.68 for males, and the hours times your last drink times 0.15, okay? And that has to be taken into account to subtract that because alcohol leaves your system over time after you've finished drinking. Now, here's an interesting thing we got from the Vic Roads website, that what can happen is if you have a big night out drinking, and this is really something to think about and be concerned about, that you can start drinking at 7 p.m. and stop at 11 p.m. Stop before midnight. Be a good little Cinderella and be home before midnight. But you stop drinking, but your blood alcohol after that actually still continues to rise as that alcohol is in your stomach, and then it's kind of goes into your blood stream and into your blood and up to your brain, where it, you know, impairs your ability to operate a motor vehicle and make other sensible decisions in life as well at that time when you are drunk. And what will happen is at 11 a.m. the next morning, the problem is that morning, like between 9 o'clock, it's not until 4 o'clock in the afternoon the next day that your blood alcohol's down to 0. And it's not till like maybe 11 a.m. that you're under the legal limit to drive. And what happens is, you know, people wake up from this big night out and they get up and go, oh, I feel awful, I've got a hangover. I'm going to drive to Macca's and, you know, get me a big sugar fix of sweet drink and sweet burger buns and junk food. And it's really good to eat when you're hungover because it slides down really easy because of the grease as well. And so yeah, they go off driving in their car, and if they get pulled over, they're like way over the limit, even though they feel fine. They don't feel like they're drunk and can't drive the car. They just feel like, oh, I got a headache and I feel awful because I had too much alcohol. All right, so that's a real danger the next day. Be careful of that. Just some life advice. So an important part of your assignment is to create the pseudocode before you do any coding. So in all of our projects, we should be making pseudocode before we do programming, okay? And the pseudocode will look something like this. So we just need to get how many standard drinks they've had, what their kilogram weight is, what their gender is, how many hours since the last drink, and that could be a decimal. It could be 1.5 hours and only be 1.5. Now, these things here, for your project, they might be different. Like if you're doing body mass index, it's a lot easier. You're just getting their height in centimeters and how much they weigh in kilograms, but it'll vary between which calculator you've chosen to do. Then there's some conversions you need to do perhaps. So in our ones, we've got to get out the number of standard drinks, work all that out, and we've also got to like put their kilogram weight into grams by timesing by 1,000. So there's a bit of conversion here. Then we need to decide the resistance value, so we need some if else. in the program, and probably on the form we'd have either a drop-down list or radio button so they can pick and click male or female. And it's 0.68 and 0.55. Get the resistance value sorted. Then you put it into the big blood alcohol content calculator formula, and be very careful with where you have these brackets. So notice it starts off with some double brackets and ends in some double brackets. So this alcohol content consumed has to be divided by that whole thing. This one minus the other one. So make sure you've got brackets and all that is working properly on that. And then if you're over 0.05 in Melbourne, that's our legal limit, you might have to change that for where you live, you're going to be over the limit, and tell them what their estimated blood alcohol concentration is. Otherwise, they look as though they're under the limit, and give them an indicator of what the value was, all right? So at stage 1 of the build, we're just making a little prototype first, and you don't have to include any pseudocode or code about doing the input validation, because the idea of pseudocode is it's something simple, just that you can get a picture of what the program needs to do. You can start making that in Visual Basic, and then remember, we've told you with stage 1 of the programs, you just get them working, doing some calculations. Then you worry about doing all the Homer Simpson type tests of leaving things on the form blank and clicking the go button or the calculator button, and then seeing what happens, and then fixing all of those validation problems. So let's just jump across quickly. We didn't want to make this video too long, but we'll just jump across to where we've got the Word document here. So this is a step-by-step guide which you can get, and it's sort of telling you all the steps here so that you can do your calculator project, because remember, it's an 8-step process. So the first thing is getting like your algorithm pseudocode. That was one of the first things after you've researched. So you do your analysis and research, maybe find an online calculator that already does the sort of thing you are trying to do with yours. And then, now just a word about testing too. When you test yours later on, you don't just like run yours and see if it gets the same answers as these, because we found with the blood alcohol one actually that some things didn't seem to be quite right on some of the online calculators we used. They gave sort of really different answers. So you need to do your testing a different way, which we'll talk about soon. But you've done your research, you know what your formulas are and what your program has to do and what one like that on the web looks like. You know how to get the standard drinks because that's required as an input to the blood alcohol content. You know the difference if you're in Australia versus if you're in America, and you've done all that research and analysis. So that's kind of the research analysis phase. Then you're ready to start designing. So you get your algorithm for the basic thing that's going to work without any validation or anything fancy, just to get the inputs and get the mathematics going okay. So you get that done. Then you build just a quick little prototype. So this isn't the one we showed you before. This is the prototype version. So in this one, we've just got it so that they can put things in with message boxes. So we're just asking them here with an input box, just a message box. A box is going to pop up on the screen and just say, hey, put your height in, and you put it in. And then another box types up to put your gender, and another box to put how long since your last drink. So that's just done by message boxes in this quick little prototype. And you run that and get some inputs and just see what sort of values you're getting out here. I notice they're like really long decimal values. We haven't put rounding off or formatting in yet. This is just the first version, the quick little stage 1 program. And then we need to trace table to check the algorithm. So here's how to do a trace table. You need to number all of the steps in your pseudocode, and we're just going to kind of test this pseudocode without even kind of building or running the program or anything. So you take some values here for a typical situation. A 75 kilogram male's had a couple of drinks an hour ago, and that's the result we got. Now if we trace through, we can work out what did line 1 of the code do, what did line 2 do, what did line 3 do, what had happened by the time you got to line 11. So you fill in these values as you go and as the program calculates things, and that's called a trace table. And then you need to do testing after that, and we're going to talk about testing in a minute. And you'll learn something really new and cool, which is how to use debug WriteLine for your testing. So that's a nice little neat trick too. Then we get all that working, and we've tested the algorithm, and we know the algorithm works. And then once you've got that little baby prototype one working, then you start looking at, okay, let's build a much better looking one. Okay, so this is sort of the second stage. So here we're actually going to have text boxes and radio buttons and give them special names following our Hungarian camel case stuff, which we've done before and we should all know how to do by now, and sort of getting proper try-catch processing to do some validation and let them know if things are wrong with a message and all that sort of thing. So you don't have to use the long if, else, if, do validation submodule for this one. You can probably get away with just try and try. But anyway, which of the methods you use is up to you. Go back to our validation lesson and watch it to learn all about that. How to do the radio buttons and so on and so on and so on. And then it shows the testing and how everything worked out. And then I think at the end we've just got all of the full program code listing for you with a blank page at the end there, which we don't need. So that's that. All right, back to the slideshow. So we've done that. So a critical part is to test it, as we were talking about. So first up here, we've just got for that little yellow screen, the little baby prototype one we made first, we've just picked 3 people here. Person number 1, person number 2, person number 3. So number 1 is a 75 kilogram male. They've had 4 standard drinks 2 hours ago. So that's test case 1. That's our input data for the test case, the things that they're going to input into the program. And yours will be different. Like if you're doing the BMI calculator, you'll only have 2 of these. They're just putting in their height in centimeters and their weight in kilograms. So the idea would be to have a lightweight person, a medium weight person, and someone who's obviously way too heavy perhaps. And that's what we sort of tried to do here. We did someone who'd had 4 drinks, someone who'd had 6 drinks. This guy's a lot heavier, so we'd see what sort of difference that would make, the weight. And then we got a female one, because remember they have lower resistance to alcohol. So there are 3 input test cases with the input data that needs to be typed in. Then we need to look at the outputs. Now, for each test case, like number 1, where we've got the 75 kilogram male, these are the input values up in here for number 1. Now you need to work out the expected result. All right, now that isn't a whole lot of fun for this one because you have to take your back formula, put in these values, all right, and actually work out just with a normal calculator. So just get the Windows desktop calculator that comes with Windows and work out, that should come out 0.04843, whatever. And then actually run your program and see what your program gets. And you can see your program gets the same answer pretty much. So that is okay, that is a pass, all right? So we know that the algorithm seems to be working for that case, but we need to test it just for a couple of others, just to make sure that a manual calculation done old school style, like you do in an algebra or a maths class, putting in, substituting the values, pushing the buttons on the calculator, make sure that answer matches the one that's coming out on the screen so you know that everything's good and working properly. Now to help you with testing, we show you a technique in the Word document, which is the debug write line. So what you can do is near the end of your main calculation subroutine, right near the end before you do end sub and end the whole process, you can put in these debug write lines. So we've just done a whole bunch of debug write lines here to write some words and then substitute in the value that we've got in our program for the number of standard drinks. What's the value we've got in our program for the kilogram weights? And that will display kind of underneath your program in the Visual Basic Solution Explorer when you run it. And you'll see this little immediate window box and it's going to actually print out this data for you. So it's kind of cool. It gives you like your input data. It tells you what it found the resistance was. So this was a male, so male, and it has figured out resistance is correct. 0.68 is the one it's used for male. It's worked out the alcohol content, the grams, and the blood alcohol content value. So this kind of gives you some step-by-step calculating, just so if things aren't working out, you can use these debug write lines here, the values of them in the output window, and that will help you kind of make sure your program's working. And you can either like sort of snip that out with the Windows snipping tool and copy and paste that in as part of your test results in your test data. All right, now, why do we go to so much effort doing all of that testing? Well, testing is extremely important. It takes ages. Remember the 80-20 rule, right? That the last 80% of adding in all those validation checkings, doing all of the test cases. That's going to be 80% of the pain and suffering. The 20% fun part was at the start, just getting the code in there and getting it working. And then after that is a heavy slog of validation and testing. Now, these are just some problems which have happened in the last sort of 3 months, just to me, here in Melbourne. So goodness knows how many of these are happening around the world. Now some of these made it onto national TV news. It was all over social media. And so, you know, if there's a mistake made, that's going to cost the company a fortune. In some public relations company coming in and being hired paid thousands of dollars an hour to sort that out. The company could lose millions of dollars, lose customers. So here's just a few of them, like the gym, this gym, which I belong to. Yeah, they double charge people on one of the monthly payments that automatically comes out of your account with an auto deduct. But it took them like ages to fix it. You know, it didn't, like, they couldn't just recredit you. It took them about 2 months to get it right and working properly again after they did some, you know, upgrade to their system or whatever. RACV Insurance in Melbourne, they just randomly debited people's accounts. So they just took money out of people's accounts, and people got notices from their bank that their account was overdrawn, and it was all because the RACV insurance system was messing up and like stealing all this money out of their accounts. So that was an absolute fiasco for RACV Insurance, an insurance company here for cars in Melbourne. And the ANZ Bank, where Passy used to work in the good old days, and did lots and lots of testing and worked really hard. Well, they're having all sorts of problems at the moment. On November 17th, we went out shopping and the ANZ card just wasn't working and everything was messed up for ANZ. And that was actually, I think, due to some, because on the weekend they do maintenance releases, so I knew that would have been from a maintenance release, and they had to like restore back to old versions of the database because suddenly all the transactions for the last 2 days disappeared off your statement and all this stuff, because so I knew exactly what they were doing, and that had a big problem. But then they had an even bigger one near the end of the year. We have this thing in Melbourne, Boxing Day sales, which is like the Black Friday sales in the US. Biggest sales of the year, and ANZ Bank's system just crashed and burned right at the start of the sales. People couldn't use their credit cards. People couldn't even go to ATMs and get money. And then they have this thing that the major banks share a network, so that the idea was that if one network went down, like ANZ's, they could link onto Commonwealth Bank's network and use theirs until they fix their problem. But what happened was ANZ's disaster must have been so bad that the Commonwealth Bank, another bank's ATM network, went down as well, and their customers couldn't get any money. And then I think ANZ must have been doing the processing for a whole bunch of gift cards that people got for Christmas from different stores. So people were going out Boxing Day straight after Christmas with their gift card, you know, which someone had just given them for Christmas, to spend it, and they couldn't spend it because the system wasn't working for the gift card. So I don't know what happened there, but that is like a major, major fiasco. Now, I do know of a lot of Australian companies, they're outsourcing their operations overseas, and they're even outsourcing testing and production support for those operations overseas. Now, some of these overseas companies would be doing a lot of production support for all sorts of different systems, and they don't know the banking system in detail. So all sorts of things can go wrong, and expect more of this in the future in Australia as they do outsourcing to overseas. Not because those overseas people are dumb and stupid and not as good as us here, but simply because those overseas people are overloaded with work looking after lots of different systems. And it's easy for them to get confused and make mistakes just because they've got too much to do, all right? So if you're a developer though for a company and you skipped on the testing or didn't finish something or do something properly, often after one of these big fiascos like ANZ have had, there's a witch hunt, all right? And people that work there, they're checking up on everything you did, trying to find someone to blame for the problem, all right? So, you know, you got to watch out for that when you are a programmer, and you could lose your job. And I know guys that have lost their job because of that sort of stuff, all right? So testing, don't skimp on it. It's vitally important. And that's my rant and rave, and feeling very sorry for the ANZ Bank because they're just having such serious problems. But I think they probably brought that upon themselves, all right? I don't think they do enough testing anymore. Just my personal opinion, I don't know for sure. But I'd say they probably don't do as much testing, and it isn't nearly as rigorous as it used to be in the old days. All right, now for your thing, also make sure you do backups. When ANZ had the problem, they were able to roll back their databases 2 days and people's transactions disappeared, but then they did come back again later afterwards. They fixed it. So you still had to pay your credit card bill for those 2 days. But make sure you're backing up so you don't lose your assignment. So to a USB flash drive and to the cloud. So all of my work here at Passie's World of ICT, it goes on to a USB stick that I have on my car keyring, and it also goes up to a Dropbox account, all right? So make sure you are backing up. That is vitally important. Don't come to your teacher saying, oh, an assignment was on my USB flash drive, but I've lost the flash drive now. Well, that means you lost the assignment, buddy. 0, 0, 0, okay? And learn your lesson and don't do it again. All right, so pick one of the assignments to do, and look, hopefully it's going to be fun for you and a challenge, because you can go back to everything we've done about validation, about getting inputs, about designing a nice looking form with good user experience, and put something together that's like a little prototype kind of thing that people could actually use to work stuff out. And then you could give that to someone or outsource it over to the India or the Philippines or Russia or somewhere where they do programming really cheap. And you could get them to build that for you. Say, hey, we just want something that looks like this. Can you build us something that works on an iPhone? And can you guys make us something that works on Android? And then you could try sell that or something like that. But you can't actually take a Visual Basic one and sell it to anyone or run it on a phone or anything, but it gives you the skills. This is practical experience at the beginner level, just starting to sort of get a feel for what it's like to be, a software developer, all right? And having fun. Make sure you're having fun. Okay, subscribe to our channel, like this video if you found it useful, and we'll see you in the next lesson.